background. So this is always fun. Don't you love technological things, Lisa? Isn't that the fun? No. It's like the big thorn, you know, it's our thorn in our side. We talk about it all the time, like downloading. If you are following Halisa, you know all the YouTube videos, which by the way, if your husband's in the background downloading all those, yay him, because I'm seeing all these fun ones. It's fun to see pictures of you from like a long time ago. I'm like, cute hair, sister. Love you. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's why we call them vintage.
Vintage, the vintage videos.
Well aged.
Right. Father, thank you for this beautiful, beautiful morning. Thank you for the anointing on your word and your time, and then this consecration of all of it. And we thank you that you allow us to enter into it. Let our words honor you, and let your words be sealed in our hearts so that we can walk out your Torah. Amen. Good morning. Well, I'm going to do some quick little housekeeping. Good morning for everyone who's watching. No one probably wants to hear me talk, so let me get done quick. I'll read my notes here. So for everyone, all cafe members, know that last night we had our monthly webinar. It's always the second Thursday night of every month, and the times and everything are all on your calendars, and the links are all the good stuff. That video, for those of you who missed it, will be popped up later this afternoon or on Sunday morning. So we'll see when we get it done, because I accidentally converted it on my own computer instead of the cloud. So I made it really hard for Sydney to get it. So you're going to want to watch it, though. We had a great conversation with Robin from Bet Ami. Oh, my goodness. What a beautiful teacher she is. We had fun just talking about this season when we're going into, we're hearing Yeshua say, Terry, go wait, go wait, because you're going to do greater things. And we dove into the word again, kavah. What does that look like for us? And I hear a lot of you saying, I'm so busy and I'm tired and I'm weary. And this is the perfect season. He's saying kavah. Not wait like you're waiting for the doctor to call your name, or the dentist where you're like, ugh, in the waiting room. But that kavah where you're binding yourself with him. You're binding yourself with his word. So why? So like in Isaiah, you can run and not be weary. You can walk and not faint. And he wants to teach us how to do that. Losing you? Oh, goodness sakes. Okay, let me close this out. There. So you'll want to go watch that. We had a really great webinar last night, and we can't wait to have her back as a teacher. Also, for those of you cafe members, you have a Slack access. So you want to reach out to Sydney if you're not on that. It's a really great intimate place for all of us to chat, prayer request. It's outside of Facebook. You know, most of us were trying to pull outside of Facebook. So you want to get over there. Yes, I see Sarita shaking her head. She finally jumped in with a group, and where all the cool kids hang out. We're all over there. That way we can talk. There's prayer requests going on. We can ask questions. We can just be, it's a community. We love it. It's really fun over there. So you want to check into that. Now this week, we're going to go, before I introduce who doesn't need it introducing, this week, as we hop into this Parsha, we're going to get to do some here. You know, a lot of times, a lot of you have told me that you jump into this first section of Bamidbar or Numbers. Again, we have every group here, curious, Torah curious to Torah observant. We have all the way from one extreme to the other. So, you know, that's why you'll hear me saying all the words. When we jump into this Parsha, a lot of people are like, oh, there's genealogies, or oh, there's just a bunch of counting. So I skip through that and I've read over it. And when I was in school, I just checked the box that I read it. So I got credit. But it's such fun to jump in. I hope you're getting to the place now, if you've been with us for a while, that you're getting to the place where you see these parts, and then when there's genealogies, that you're like, okay, I want to go find this thing out before Charlie or Brenda say it. I want to go find these things out before I jump into on Holisa's teaching, so I can say, oh, I saw it. There was a secret nugget in there, because you know nothing is in there by mistake. There's nothing in there for no reason. And we get to see this week, we get to see this counting, right? Which it's a lifting the census again being taken, or is it? Where he's telling them to lift your heads. We get to see him announcing them as their identity as a nation, as their tribes, as their families, getting to see all that happening. We get to hear about this travel packing list. And those of you know that I'm full-time RVing, we have like a T24 list, and then the day of list where we have our checklists, how things get packed up. I have certain things like the bottles of wine and things because my house goes through an earthquake every time we travel. So things get thrown into pillows or they get wrapped certain ways. The day before we travel, things get handled beautifully or because we want to protect them and we don't want them broken in transition. So we get to see what their travel packing list is. And then we get to see this whole journey that's going to start happening through this whole book that's Mount Sinai all the way to Canaan. And when I started listening to this, all I could hear in my head was that song when I was a kid. I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. I may never fly over the enemy, but I'm in the Lord's army. Yes, sir. Do I got you singing? You're welcome. That is your weekly song to keep in your head. Yay. The last thing I want to talk about before I introduce Holisa is that we also see Eleazar promoted. We start seeing him getting readied. He's getting ready to be the high priest who's going to take them into the promised land. And we get to see him start his process of his elevation, right? Oh, wait a minute. He wasn't the first born. And now I would think as this son, I'd be a little afraid as I saw my brothers, die in front of everyone. But we see him now get promoted to he's kind of like the comptroller now. Now he's jumping in and how he's going to take over these things. And then eventually he will be elevated to the high priest when his father dies. So I'm excited about all the things inside of here. And I hope you're getting excited about that too every week. I hope you're getting excited that, wow, there's something in here, and asking him, Father, what's the thing for me? And I promise you that it will pop out. So we have the pleasure, and I know that Brenda sent you a text message, Holisa, which we want to say a shout out to Brenda. We love you. Her mother did pass last week, and she's taking a much needed vacation. And so we just love you and miss you so much. But I know that she sent you a message, Holisa. She said, oh, I have pretty big shoes to fill. I hope you can. Then she laughs. I'm a size 10. And so we have filling in as a co-host, and that I say that loosely, is my friend, and all of you love her, Dr. Holisa Alwine. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Well, I don't think I'll have any problem filling Brenda's shoes, because when I was growing up, I did spend a lot of time in Arkansas, and you just can't get a pair of shoes on somebody from Arkansas.
There you go. I was like Dolly Parton says, I wear a 6, but a 7 feels so good, I wear a 9. So so we're hopping in. The first thing that happens in this section, we as we go into it, the first thing that we're told is lift up your heads. Is this just all about a census?
I don't think so, because of course, when you do take a census, you are lifting up the head in a sense, because that's what has to be counted. You don't count toes, you don't count elbows, you always count a head, because that's going to be the seat of everything. Your feet can only go where your head tells them to go. Your hands can only go where your head tells them to go. So it's important to count the head in order to acquire the census. With kind of the cautionary label warning that please don't ever count Israelites directly. Hashem himself knows why exactly, but we know the effect of it in scripture is if the heads were directly counted, like 1, 2, 3, 4, the way we used to count at the prison, then you could bring a plague on the entire nation. If you did, David did that, and he had to pay dearly. His people had to pay dearly for a direct head count. And so you always counted them indirectly. You would take, for instance, a half shekel, which is a small amount of money, but instead of counting the actual people, the person would give the half shekel, and then they would pile them all together, do the math, and then they knew exactly how many. But this particular census is not like a census they've taken before. Before they took a census, how many came out of Egypt? They took another census. Well, how many do we have left after the golden calf? And in this census, it has a very specific context, which is these are the men of war.
Right.
And attaching that particular point, what's the goal of this census? We need to know how many men we have between this age and this age who are fit to go to war. Because later, everybody knows, I think prophecies in the first 5 books of the Bible and everything else in the Bible to Revelation builds on that. So I don't study prophecy starting with Daniel or starting with Revelation. I always have to start in a Torah portion and let that Torah portion carry me there. And so that's what I do. If I read something in Revelation I'm not really clear about, I say, okay, where is this topic in the Torah? And of course, if I get to the 144,000, the 12 tribes who are sealed in the book of Revelation, I say, okay, let me go back to the Torah portions that address these 12 tribes in a very focused way. Bamidbar, the Torah portion we're on this week, is one of those. Another big one is Matot, which literally means tribes. Like if you want to know about tribal prophecy, then why wouldn't you go to the portion that's named tribes? It's just common sense. It's not really hard. It's just knowing that it's there. Nothing's hard as long as you know it's there to find. And the hard part is not knowing it's there. So in this case, it's about men of war. And we see that context too in Revelation. And it's the specific placement, not just the head count of the tribes, but it's how they're being now organized around the tabernacle, how they're being placed. That's really vital to understanding why do we need to know how many warriors are there? And why do they need to be arranged in just this particular way? That's one of the hardest things I think we can learn from this particular Torah portion, as well as the book of Leviticus or Vayikra, is that the hardest thing we ever do sometimes is what we don't do. And it's really hard because, at least in the United States, we've got a couple of generations, maybe 3 now. I've kind of lost count, I'm too old. But we were brought up being told there's nothing you can't do if you really try hard enough. You just try hard and you can do anything you want to do. Nothing is out of reach. And I'm like, well, yes, it is, because I can barely do long division. So I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be doing calculus. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be a nuclear physicist. And if I were, the world should worry. Because if I had the launch codes, it would be a mess.
Right.
So, yeah, there are things that we're not able to do, either because it's not our God-given gift, because it's not his calling on our lives. In some cases, it's not the family in which we were born. And there's 2 kinds of families in the Bible, maybe 3, if you split the Levites into Levites and Kohanim, or priests. If you weren't born into that family, well, you can't rebirth yourself. You can't say, oh no, I want to be a Levite. Put me back in the womb somewhere in a Levite womb, because that's what I want to do. And in this particular case, what the greatest number of Israelites had to realize is that, you know what, we're not Levites and we're not permitted to do that service. And we're not priests, and we're not permitted to do that service. And later there would be kings from David, and nobody who wasn't from the line of David was really credentialed to sit as a king. Although, and this has nothing to do with anything, by the way, in the first century, people still knew who was of Davidic descent. And that was one of the reasons that both Romans and Jews alike were concerned about Yeshua, because there was a line of the Davidic dynasty that had been precluded from ever sitting on the throne again. They had forfeited. There was another line that was still eligible, and Yeshua's genealogy, at least through his mother, still qualified him and his brothers to sit on the Davidic throne. And so where there is such a concern about uprisings, this was a factor. People were afraid he would stand up and then the people would follow him, because they knew he had a legitimate claim to the throne. So sometimes lineage determines what we can or can't do, at least in this context. And that might be a life lesson for us, is there might be things we want to do in life that we really can if we try hard enough, if we throw every resource we have into it, if we pray and say, I'm coveting this better gift to serve the kingdom, not myself. But there's simply other things we're not called to do. And if we try to do them, we'll just feel like we're butting our heads against a wall over and over.
That's a good word. Something that maybe was a new revelation to me, not all Levites were Kohanim, but all Kohanim were Levites.
Right. The Kohanim had to be descended from Aaron. And then, of course, he had a 50% attrition rate with his sons. So who wants to be a priest, right?
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting that you have a lot of I've heard believers be like, they really want to identify with being a Levite, or they want to identify with that, and they don't realize what a dirty job being a Kohanim and working. I mean, it was everyone's job to maintain things, whether they were providing provision for it or they were actually working, but processing at an altar, woo, that was a dirty job. Helping people with their approaches, it's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it. It could be their own show, the dirty job show, but it was not pretty, and everyone wanted to do it. But if you're not in the family, if you're not from the lineage of Aaron, that's not gonna be your job.
Right. And as we keep reading, eventually here in a few weeks, we're going to get to a Torah portion called Korach. And, he was of the family of the Levites, but he wasn't qualified for the priestly service. And so he leads this rebellion, which you were asking earlier about the firstborn. We get Reuben, or Reuben, the tribe of Reuben, who was displaced as the firstborn by Judah. And they incite, of course, Reuben to come along with them because they also feel like they've been displaced. Korah, his rebel, says, oh, we want to be priests. We're Levites. We can be priests too. And then the Reubenites say, well, when this thing all started way back in Egypt, the firstborn of each family was a priest. So you've displaced us with the Levites. And so they kind of had something in common, although with most, conspiracies and rebellions, if they get what they want, they'll turn on each other. So I'm not concerned that would have gone very far, but at any rate, it's just, you can see how, God blesses me with so much. And why am I really coveting something different or something else or what someone else has when, he's asked me to do this and to do it well. And being a Levite was very dangerous, by the way. If you touch these holy articles, if you handle them inappropriately, if you, make a mistake, then you die. And that's why, we see the sons of Aaron being put in charge of certain Levites so they can observe, they can teach them how to handle things. They can supervise them handling things, and that way there won't be any fighting. Mm-hmm. Because if there's fighting and disagreement, that will kill you as fast as touching something you're not supposed to touch. And the quarreling could be an issue. So you can see in the same way that the tribes themselves are being organized so they won't fight about who goes first and who goes second and who brings up the rear, because that couldn't have been fun.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that this has to all be put in advance, because knowing that there was going to be a revolt later on, which we'll read, we know that's going to happen. It would have been very easy for everyone to go, oh yeah, that makes sense. The firstborn. Oh yeah, but instead they had the SOPs, their standard operating procedures had been given to them so they could, now, I'm military background here. So I'm like, let me go look at my SOP. Let's look that up. Oh, this is exactly how we do it. This is what it says. And so it would not have been, they had a guideline. Isn't the grace of our Father that he's like, here's some guidelines. Oh wait, he gave us Torah for that. So that when things come up and you can say, like you said, let's living the thus saith the Lord life.
Right. And because the very first line of the Torah portion, it's going to be what is it in English? Numbers. uh,
It's okay. I'll be your Fisher Price girl over here using
I
Deborah's.
went blank there for a second because I'm looking at the Hebrew text. But in Numbers 1:1, it gives us a very specific thing to attach to everything we're about to read in this Torah portion. And that's why it's good to, if you can, learn the titles of the Torah portions, even if some of them sound alike to you, especially when you get to the V portion. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like Vitabear. Everything starts with a Vav.
Gesundheit. Yeah.
Right. Because what it will do, once you learn what that word means, the more you read these portions, the more you'll see that name of the Torah portion. And in your mind, you already have a little world built around what happened in that Torah portion. Like I'm saying, if I'm reading in Revelation and I'm curious about these 12 tribes being sealed, then I say, wait a minute, let me go back to my little note cards I have over the Torah portions. And then I pull out my tote and it says tribes. I'm like, I'm going to start here and it's going to be fruitful. Because that Torah portion, there's probably a couple others with it, but they will explain to you where that number 144,000 comes from. So at any rate, the very first verse, it says, and I'm reading out of the Art Scroll, so it's going to substitute Hashem for Lord, the Lord. So it would be in English, the Lord or Hashem spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the first of the second month in the second year after their exodus from the land of Egypt, saying, take a census. And so he doesn't just say, take a census. We're told that he spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. That's important because, we've just come through Leviticus and there wasn't a huge emphasis on Mount Sinai in the book of Leviticus. It's like, okay, we're past that. We've built the tabernacle. Now let's figure out what are the details about the tabernacle. And so we get to Numbers and the Father brings us right back to Sinai. He says, okay, wait a minute. I want you to understand this Torah portion in the context of what you learned at Mount Sinai and the giving of the 10 Commandments. But more specifically, I want you to understand the wilderness.
Yes.
It's the wilderness of Sinai. He didn't have to put that in there at all. And that's what you look for when you study the Bible. Look for things that don't have to be there, and yet they are. Things that seem to be a repetition when there's no need for repetition, but there is a need for repetition. It's because, he's trying to help us every way possible to focus on the right things in the text. And the wilderness of Sinai, it shows you how he prepares us to go into the promised land. So if we feel like we're in a wilderness, it's not as though the Father's not going to speak to us. That's exactly, he will keep reminding us, I speak to you in the wilderness, because this is where I'm going to organize you. Remember in Revelation? We said, if we're curious about Revelation, we go back to the Torah portion.
Right.
So what do? We go back. Let's say we're interested about why did the eagle carry the woman out into the wilderness? Well, we're going to have some clues here, but I believe it's the Torah portion. Is it Jethro, where he says, remember how I carried you on eagle's wings? Well, carried you on eagle's wings, it does put you back into the Mount Sinai frame of mind. I carried you here. So where is the woman being carried? Into the wilderness. What's he going to speak to her when he nourishes her? He's going to speak to her the same things that he spoke to the Israelites before. But now, I think Yeshua, being more visible, they had to look forward. We have the convenience, really, of looking back to see how Yeshua fits into every single one of these Torah portions. And this is how he explained himself after he resurrected. It said, starting with Moses. So we're going to get a wonderful lesson in Moses in the context of Yeshua. He says, I want you to remember the wilderness of Sinai. And as you know, Shavuot or Pentecost will be coming up on Sunday night. And this Torah portion always falls right at Shavuot. And so the two things link together. It helps you to remember the wilderness of Sinai. I'm not ready to leave there yet. There's still lessons to be learned, but it helps you connect it to your calendar time too. Where am I in time? And it's a great reinforcement, I think.
I was reading about that. It's interesting that the groom in a wedding, a Jewish wedding, the groom is always called up the Shabbat before the wedding. He's called up to Torah the Shabbat before, and that it's a correlation that this is the portion that's read before really the wedding. We're brought up to, and it's like the friend of the bride, like, in a sense, what I'd wrote down for myself, it's reconnecting us. It's we're rereading all of this just before Shavuot, the wedding. We can think about that. That's reconnecting us in unity. It's reconnecting all of us in this unity. And so, I don't know. I just think it's really interesting that it's not none of it's a coincidence. Oh, that's kind of a coincidence that happens. No, it's not. It's not a coincidence. It's meant to be that way. And we have this group of people who have been slaves. They don't have their identity is this ragtag group of people, running around with, they lived with, their identity was what they did. Oh, I'm the brick maker, and I work for the house of, the whatever Egyptian person gave them with their Egyptian name, and they worked for this house of this Egyptian person, and that had been their identity up until they came into the wilderness. And now all of a sudden they're being divided up, and they're proclaiming whether they were standing before. I mean, I think there's different thoughts of this. I love hearing your input, but that they were, the head of the house is standing at their tent door, or they're coming to the tabernacle, whatever, the tent, whatever's happening, but they're saying, I am Jacob, son of Isaac, and I am from the tribe of, and they're all being reconnected, and their identity is being proclaimed over them. And this restoration of families, that was my big takeaway this week, was the amazing restoration of families that is happening here. Imagine them all spread out. They're hanging out with their friends because they used to work together. Oh yeah, we were a slave on that one pyramid. And now they're all being pulled into their families again. And they're saying, this is who I am. And there is something prideful to say, you know what? I'm Charlie. I am the daughter of Thelma. I am the granddaughter of Elby. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Jacob. I mean, sitting, some people go through and they're looking up their genealogies. I had a period of time that I was bedridden. That was my little fun thing. And went back and found, watching that I have these wonderful relatives that are in Germany, that the stories that were left behind that they're telling, that as an Ashkenazi Jew, what was happening in their lives and what they were doing. And then how they come over here, and of course they release their faith so that they fit in. But there was a pride that comes with that. Now, I know Paul warns us not to get all crazy in genealogies and everything, because we all grafted in, we're all part of him. But still, there's this new identity that's happening with them. There's a pride happening. They're being divided. They're being put together, and now they're proclaiming their names, which is prophecy for every single person, is standing up and proclaiming their names, not their Egyptian name, right?
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. In chapter 2, I think it's verse 34, it says, so they encamped according to their divisions, and so they journeyed, every man according to his families, by his father's house. So you're right, that sense of identity, he's rebuilding them. It's like boot camp. They break down your old identity, and then you regroup with kind of a new sense of family and purpose. And in this case, the context of the census was warriors. And so we have not only warriors, we have a nation of warriors. And their job is to do spiritual battle in the earth. It was never just about, who can handle a sword and a spear. It was who is going to stand strong spiritually. Because now we have a calling from Mount Sinai. We realized we had to be a light to the nations. That's the focus, obviously, of Shavuot, being a light to the nations. That's why it's very customary to read the book of Ruth during Shavuot. And so it's a time to reconsider according to my background. And you say, well, I don't know what my lineage is. I don't know what my tribe is. I don't even know where I would fit in here. And it's not important, because even in Judaism today, if you were to convert to Judaism, you were called a son of Abraham or a daughter of Sarah to this day. So you say, well, where do I fit? Well, until somebody, maybe it's Elijah at the end of days, according to tradition, during the kingdom, you'll be assigned a place. You won't have to wonder. But at this point, if it helps you feel better, most of the Jews don't know where they fit either. Everything got scrambled up when the records were lost after the destruction of the temple. So it's very difficult for them too. They don't know who's in what tribe, really. They just go under the general heading of Judah, which makes sense because Judah was the leader of the 12 tribes. He moved first. Yeshua came from the tribe of Judah. They have a leadership gift there. But even they now are going to have to rely on, the government of the Messianic kingdom to assign them their lineage. And so, like you're saying, standing at the tent, recounting, these are my ancestors, it gives them a strong sense of identity. And the message embedded in there, it says they encamped according to their divisions, and so they journeyed. In other words, as you organize in your place, in your tent, as organized as your tent is, that's how you're going to journey. If your tent is in a state of chaos, your journey will reflect that state of chaos. But if you can start to bring your tent into a state of spiritual discipline and purpose, and saying, what is my purpose? Where can I serve right now? Then that sense of purpose and organization and the peace that you bring in your own tent, even when you have to pick everything up and move, and you weren't ready to move that day, but the Spirit says, move, I have something I need you to do now. Instead of going into the state of chaos, you're going to take your state of organization and peace, and you're going to inject that organization and peace into the new situation. And it's going to affect everybody around you. It might be your supervisor. It might be your coworkers. It might be extended family members. It might be your own family. And you're saying, no, there's no sense in going into a state of chaos. We have practiced the disciplines of the Spirit at home, and we will carry that discipline forward wherever the Spirit, because it was the Spirit moving them.
Right.
You can't forget that. If the cloud and the ark didn't move, they didn't move. Well, we don't need to be moving around if the Spirit didn't lead us there. We wait for the Spirit to move. In fact, the one time they got in really big trouble is when they moved and the cloud and the ark didn't move. They sent the spies in. Up to this point, they only moved when the ark and the cloud moved. Now they say, well, we're going to go look on our own. They didn't wait for the ark and the cloud. It's huge trouble. It cost them, almost 40 years extra, penalty box. So right. We don't want to go in the penalty box by getting ahead of the Holy Spirit.
I know you're saying this is hitting people hard, because we talk very practical in here. It's like we can go in, and I highly recommend, if you're not part of Holisa's weekly studies, go in, email her, get on her list, get in those studies, dig in deep. That's amazing. This is such a great time to hear some practical application, because it really is about some practical things here. And one of the things is, some of you are wanting to run out and conquer demons and raise the dead, and you don't have authority over your dish of dishes, a sink full of dishes, or you God's calling you to go do something and you don't have clean underwear because your laundry is so falling everywhere. You're like, are you really ready for when he says get up and go? And I think this is such a great time for he is calling us in. Part of our identity is that it says that our tents are to be in order, our tents are to be beautiful, not to brag on people, for people to come in and go, oh my goodness, I cut to covet what we have, but to inspire them. And there's a piece that comes with organization. And in this group, all this is happening. There's a piece that comes with it. I have this, I'll share. So if some of you don't know what the camp kind of looked like, I thought I'd share this. And if you want to just talk about, it's interesting. If y'all notice the levy, notice that they're dispersed, and think about the blessing that's given from Yaakov to his children. When he blesses Levi, he tells them that they'll be scattered. That's what I saw when I saw this, that they would be scattered. And it's interesting. Their name it actually means like, what does it mean? Like a, not unifier. I think I wrote it down somewhere.
Attach.
Like an
attachment.
Yeah, like a joiner. It's, and it's interesting that they're the ones, we look at them, they rallied, right? And they brought people together when it came to their sister. We have our gifts can be perverted and negative and do harm, or they can be a gift. So instead, now they're dispersed here. And do you want to talk about this little graph at all for anyone?
Well, I think one of the lessons we can see from that particular arrangement, in fact, one of my workbooks, I break down the encampments of the Levites and show prophetically what was going on there. It's pretty deep though, because it's a Hebrew word study more than anything. But you can see the same thing in the encampment of the 12 tribes. And it's the same thing I would do when I taught school. My first 7 years, I taught high school English. I taught at Arkansas High School, and then I taught over in Texas for a few years before we moved, and I went into law enforcement. And the first day of school, everybody wants to go in. They find a desk by their friends. Well, that's the worst place they could possibly be sitting in order to learn anything. And so what I would do is I would alphabetize them. They would already have an assigned seat when they walked into the classroom. And that way I didn't have to fight the chatting, all the stuff that goes on. They knew I was in charge before their butt ever hit the seat.
Right.
Now, we're not going to play that game. We're here to learn English. And right up front, it was, oh, well, you're on point here. You already know our games. I'm like, well, good grief. I just graduated 4 years ago. Of course I know your games. I play them. But
I invented them.
right. And so, I was the champion at doing stuff and getting other people to get blamed for it, because I always looked like I would never do that. And of course I would. Just a little clandestine. I popped more balloons on senior day than anybody and got away with it. But yeah, ask Robin Skinner about that one. I think John Kerry a different John Kerry got blamed for that. But see, if he hadn't been so mischievous all year long, they wouldn't have assumed he did it instead of me. But in that arrangement, what I'm saying is this is an organized space. And no matter where you sit, I have a purpose for you. And through the year, if I needed to readjust some things, I would. But for the most part, just alphabetizing them disrupted what I would call, these partnerships where if you separate these two kids, they're great kids. You put them together and they're nothing but trouble. And if you break that up, if you break up Shimon and Levi, Simeon and Levi, if you break those two up, then they actually have wonderful gifts. It's just when you put them together, they get into trouble.
Right.
And so you can see that in the arrangement, that the tribes were spaced so that if one had a kind of a deficiency, the other tribe in that division would have a strength there, and vice versa. They were complementary. Like traditionally, Zebulun did a lot of commerce because they had a lot of ships. but the tribe of Issachar were thought to be really great Bible scholars. And so what would happen is the tribe of Zebulun provided a lot of financial support to the tribe of Issachar so that they could have places of study. And so they're working together. They're both benefiting from their gift. And it's for the good of everybody. But even deeper than this, it's not just, oh, where you're weak, this one's strong. That arrangement that you pulled up right there is a prophecy. And that prophecy, if we keep reading, will extend again all the way to the book of Revelation. And it will help you understand why the four angels were holding back the four winds. That's the value of Torah when you're trying to figure out prophecy. Which, am I just teasing you right there?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thanks. And I love this analogy about these guys here, the levy being divided. The other thing is, like, even together, it kept them divided so that together it's like dividing their seats up in school, like so they don't get in trouble and they keep focused on what their focus is towards the center. Their focus is on what they're supposed to be doing. And looking at this, you see, it's really a picture of the body, how we all need to stay in our lanes. We need to be doing what we're called to do. So thanks for can you give us just a tiny unpack maybe one like makeup bag about this prophecy on this four winds and what that looks like? Is that crazy?
Sure. Just keep looking at that graphic right there, and you see the camp of Judah down there at the bottom, and we know Judah went first. So once the clouds started moving, of course the Levites are going to start packing things up. And eventually, once everything's ready to go, they'll start moving the ark. They have to carry it. So they set out on foot carrying the ark. And once Judah sees that the ark is moving, the cloud has already started movement to kind of as the signal. There's of course going to be trumpets for communication and so forth, but it's the tribe of Judah who will set out first. And Judah, you notice, is in the center of his division. There's Zebulun, Judah, and Issachar. So Judah is the leader, and each of those 12 tribes would have their own flag. It's called a degel in Hebrew. And we're used to that. We're used to seeing really bright banners and things with the pictures of the 12 tribes, their symbols on them. So each of the 12 tribes had its own symbol, even Levi. His was like the choshen, the breastplate with the 12 precious stones. That was his. But the one in the middle of each of the four divisions, so it would be Judah, Dan, Ephraim, and Reuven, each of those would have another banner, again called a degel. It's a divisional banner. And that's why it says they encamped according to their divisions and according to their families and their father's house. So there's organization on organization on organization, but you had to travel in your division. And so that extra banner that the leader of your division would carry, that was kind of a focal point where people could look up and they could rally around that particular banner and know that I'm still walking in my division. I know I'm still where I need to be. But each of those banners held a symbol of the four living creatures from the book of Ezekiel. And if you'll remember, it's going to be the lion, the eagle, the man, and the bull. So Judah obviously is going to be carrying the banner of the lion. And then Reuven, his banner is going to be in the form of a man. Ephraim's banner is going to be representative, again, of the house of Joseph, which took up the whole west side. And then Dan is going to have a banner that they believe looked like an eagle, but they said because his tribal banner was a serpent, they think that the eagle may have kind of almost had a form that looked like a flying dragon to us. They're not real clear on that, but at any rate, they know that the essence of it was an eagle. So each of these four divisions represents a direction. Judah represents the east. And he represents also the east wind. So when you see those four angels in Revelation, they're holding back the four winds. Each of those four winds can be very damaging in a very specific way in the Bible. So Judah holding the division there of the lion, which reflects the divine chariot in heaven, the spirit of Adonai that can move in any direction. And you can see how these warriors could move in any direction if they were attacked according to this arrangement. And so we have there the lion, then we have the tribe of Reuben, which is the man, that's also reflecting the divine chariot. He's going to be the one who represents the south wind. Then Ephraim, he's the bull. He's going to represent the west wind. And then the tribe of Dan, holding the eagle, he's going to represent the north wind. And each of those winds has a particular quality to it in scripture. I mean, it's a great prophecy study just to study the four winds and what they bring. In general, the east wind, where Judah's facing with the lion, it can bring very hot and the most damaging of winds. It just withers everything up, or it's associated with the plague of locusts, that sort of stuff, where it just doesn't leave anything. There's the north wind, which is said to bring hail and damaging rain and those sorts of things, the heavy snow that causes damage, not the good snow, not go skiing snow. And then there's the west wind, which it says brings darkness upon the earth. And then there's the south wind, which it says brings the dews, which can be an awesome thing, dews and showers of rain. And so the south would seem to be the most favorable wind of all, unless it's out of time. And that's the thing with each of these winds. We've heard of the phrase prevailing winds, and unless we were sailors, we probably didn't pay much attention to a prevailing wind. But you don't want all of these winds blowing at the same time. In the same season, you've got total chaos. Nothing could grow. You couldn't get anywhere on the seas. I mean, it would be a mess. It would be chaos. So when you see those four angels holding back the four winds, and he says, wait until I have sealed my own before you let these winds go, because I have to protect.
Yeah.
And so there's something that's going on in these tribal camps, in these divisions, that is actually holding back the damaging winds, where if they all let go at the same time, it's going to destroy a lot of stuff. And that's what I mean by how this is prophecy, because how they camped was how they were supposed to camp in obedience. And when they obeyed, they had the spiritual character to hold back the most damaging parts of their wind. So Judah's east wind could be a profitable wind. So Dan's north wind could be the right kind of snow at the right time. So Ephraim's wind, it could be the darkness, but of the right kind of darkness. So Reuben, it could be the good dew at the right time, instead of, when they needed rain. If you need rain, you don't want dew. And if you need dew, you don't want rain. There's specific growing seasons in Israel, and everything is keyed around the growing seasons of Israel. And so the idea here is, when Israel was in obedience, organized, like you say, staying in their lane, functioning in their calling, then the whole world benefited. They truly were a light to the world. That menorah that was in the tabernacle, the other nations could feel it, because Israel itself was, in a sense, controlling the weather. They were holding back the angels at the four winds. And the more Israel descended, the more chaotic the winds would become. And so you typically have one wind prevailing at one time or one season, even though there might be other winds blowing. There's one that's stronger than the others. And so the understanding here is that there's only one person who can take all four winds and to organize them like this camp is being organized so that all four winds can blow simultaneously and bring a blessing at the exact same time. And there's a really funny thing in the Midrash. It talks about the north wind, and it says that King Messiah is hidden in the north wind. And when the time comes, King Messiah will be aroused from the north and he will be awakened. And they use that scripture that says, and I can't think of the reference off the top of my head right now, but it says, to the north, give them up, the exiles. Let them come back to Israel. Give them up. And then it says to the south wind, don't hold back. So King Messiah is able to activate these two winds simultaneously to do the exact same mission. The dews of the south represent resurrection. Dew in scripture represents resurrection. So at the same time, they say that King Messiah is awakened from his dormancy. For some reason, the Jews knew that Messiah would go dormant, like he's been for the last 2,000 years. He'll be hidden away. But when he is awakened, they said he will also call in the south wind of resurrection, and all the exiles from the east, south, the north, and the west, all those winds will start blowing at the same time, and it won't be for their harm. It will be for their awakening, for their resurrection. And when this happens, I suspect what can follow, once these people are safe and sealed and so forth, that may be when the angels at the four winds, who would be holding or restraining the damaging winds, once those people are safe, then I think they're going to let go simultaneously. And the earth may experience some chaotic times at that time.
Well, all of our minds are exploding. And everyone's like, is this recorded? Is this recorded? Yes, we're recording. You all, and I will again post and tell all of you where you can find it. You can always find these recordings, not only inside, if you are a Facebooker, if you're watching, then you can, in the portion, if you look under, I think they've changed the name to guides on Facebook now. So you click that, all of our videos for every week are in there. You can also sign into your library. Check with us to how to do that. You can go in outside of Facebook. We do have a library. You can go in and rewatch these. We can give you a podcast link if you just want to listen. All the ways. We have all the ways. You can watch it and listen to it a million times. I'm just seeing this levee here as they're surrounding here. And I'm thinking of yesterday, we went on a walk and my husband was saying how, he said, yeah, some of the people here at this RV park are a little snooty. I said, why do you say that? And he says, well, because I wave or say hi and they're not saying hi back as they're going in their golf carts to jump on the golf course. And I said, well, they probably see this big bald guy with full sleeve tattoos and they're like, ee. And he said, yeah, until they need the big bald guy with the tattoos. And I saw this and I thought, isn't it strategic also that Levy is surrounding all the important and protecting, because that is their nature. They are they're the ones who are the warriors. They're the ones who rallied in and they're protecting. So we have the layers of protection as they're traveling. Can you imagine all this marching out? I mean, I'm like, it's like exciting. I love listening to marching music. Yeah. Little known fact, if I'm held hostage and you need to know that if it's really me, if I say, what's one of my secret favorite musics, you'll say marching band, and then they'll release the hostage. Okay, so everyone knows that now. So imagine seeing the big banners flying, and then you have the levy. Here they are. They're all surrounding. So they have to get through all of these guys first, right? Well, they're going out first. I'm saying when they're encamped. When they're encamped, they have to get through all of this encampment, and then they got to get into the levy. And I don't think anyone's going to get past them to get into the tabernacle. It's all surrounded. I mean, not like the Holy One's not protecting his own tabernacle, but anyway, that's my Fisher Price version. So
They
good.
always build the levee against the flood, right?
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm trying to look and see if I have any other questions. I don't know. We have just a few minutes left. Do you have a few minutes left? I know you're okay. We have one of the things that we jumped into is we talked about the levy, and as they were counting the Levites were counted differently than everyone else. Everyone else was counted, their heads were lifted. They wanted to know who was over the age of 20, that they were going to be the ones who were are of fighting age, right? This is the what we would say I just lost the name. Anyway, if they're a fighting age, so we know how many men are in the army, which we already talked about. But then the Levites were counted differently. They were counted from 1 month old and older.
Mm-hmm.
Why was there a difference?
There was a different purpose for it. You're not actually levying a go to war army. You need to know how many Levites there are, and you need to know how many firstborn there are among the tribes, because even though we kind of skipped over the problem in the book of Leviticus, the problem did not go away.
Right.
We had a huge failing at Mount Sinai while Moses was up on the mountain. And we know that the 12 tribes, with the exception of Levi, they stood by Moses. But the 12 tribes, various members of them started interacting with the golden calf to various degrees. Up to that point, it was typically the firstborn who was the priest of the family. That's why Jacob had to, well, not really deceive. Well, he did the second time. The first time, he just made a good deal. He bargained himself into the birthright, but he needed the blessings in order to carry out the birthright. So it was something that was passed along to the firstborn, unless the firstborn did something pretty serious to forfeit. Then it could fall to, another member, like with Reuven, the thing with Bilhah, that's the dog, he forfeited. And then with Shimon and Levi, they went beyond their father's authority in attacking the city of Shechem. So they forfeited. So it went down to Judah. And when he steps up on behalf of Benjamin, we know he's the one. He's the one with that firstborn sense of obligation. So the tribes fell down at the golden calf in that regard. And so they needed to be redeemed. And since the tribe of Levi stood with Moses, they were replaced. The firstborn of the tribes were replaced with the Levites, with the men of the Levites who were counted. And I think there was 200 and something like 237 people off.
237, yeah.
237?
I did write that down.
I can't do the math for you, but they ended up taking that remainder and they used money instead to make up the difference of that extra 237 people. But from then on, it was not the firstborn of the family who was the priest. Instead, it was the Levites on behalf of everybody.
Isn't that cool? I love that. I think that is so cool. The other thing I think is cool about this is the number that went down. We talk about, it's back in Exodus 32. We talk about the number that went down was 3,000, right? That's the number that were killed. And guess how many on Shavuot were redeemed? Do we think that's a coincidence? Probably not. It's specifically, I'm like, Acts 2:41. About 3,000 souls were added. I think it's interesting. Were those, does it mean the same? I don't know. That's word according to Charlie, but.
Well, see, your Torah portion is giving you context of how those 3,000 can be restored. at Sinai. And that's why it says specifically the wilderness at Sinai. In this Torah portion, there will be something here to help you fit all these pieces together later.
And isn't it true, like the wilderness, it could have happened when all of this he could have taken them all into the land of Canaan. He could have taken them all into the promised land that they have now ownership of a place, or others owned at the time. It was divvied out to other inhabitants. But it's interesting that it all happened to the wilderness where no one owns anything. This is a place where I think I read a commentary on it. We're saying if someone had a apple tree in their yard, you wouldn't go inside and pick an apple and eat it because it's in their yard. But if you were in the middle of nowhere and you knew it was like BLM land, nobody owned it. It was that Bureau of Land Management. Let me clear. You had no one owns it. You'd be like, oh, and there's an apple tree growing. You would go up and be like, oh yeah, no one owns this, so I can eat this.
Exactly. It's the wilderness is a representation of Israel. And I'm going to do a teaching either on Shavuot or next Monday night that details how this works prophetically, how Israel is the wilderness. And this, again, in Revelation, the woman is taken to the wilderness, to the Jewish mindset. That's me. I'm the one being nourished in the wilderness because, in prophecy, especially, places like Ezekiel, it talks how the wilderness will turn into a garden. I'm not sure how you'd sing it in English, but there's a song from Isaiah, Yesasum, Yesasum Midbar Vitzia, is talking about how the wilderness is going to bloom like the rose and how the springs are going to break forth. And that's why the wilderness is a metaphor for Israel itself, that he will bring us back from our exile. And all of a sudden, people, it just looked like they were desert places, disconnected, ownerless. And see, that's the way I feel, I have always felt my whole life. Like I've lived different places, but nothing was ever really like home. Home was not home. And the second I got into the airspace of Israel, I knew where home was. I knew exactly, like, this is what I've waited for all my life. And when I'm in Israel, I can bloom. I call it brain draino because all of a sudden you get clear thoughts, you get vision, you just, it's like your IQ shoots up. Things aren't cloudy anymore. There's something in that particular land that draws you there. And it says this is just a fraction of what it's going to be like when you go home. In Messiah's reign, you're going to be able to think without the fog. You won't have to have lavender cream black tea. You won't have to have pure roast vanilla nut to move in the morning, because his spirit, is the waker upper. It's the resurrector. And so in the wilderness, like you said, we are ownerless. And he basically built them city walls with the clouds of glory. He put the clouds of glory around them, and they have their own little city out here, where they're being prepared to go over. But the one thing I thought I'd bring up, and then I probably don't have anything else to say, is that if you'll go back to Mark, I forget which chapter, and read about Yeshua asleep in the boat on the Sea of Galilee and how he's sound asleep on a pillow. And they think a storm comes up. They think they're going to die. They literally say, like, don't you care that we're dying? And he's like, oh, hang on, I got this. Peace, be still. You guys stop. And that was one thing that the rabbis said about the north wind. They said, if anybody who thinks he is equal with God can control the north wind, let him come. And what does Yeshua do? He stands up and says, peace, be still. This damaging storm that comes with the north wind, I tell you to be still and do what you're supposed to do. And his disciples are like, oh my gosh, even the winds obey him. this has got to be King Messiah. He's the only one who can control this north wind. And all of a sudden, the sea becomes perfectly calm. And of course, Galilee is also called Galilee of the nations in the first century. It represents all the nations that passed through there. And so basically, Yeshua can command the four winds that affect the entire earth. That's pretty cool.
That is so cool. There's several ladies I just glanced over saying that they're asking how do they want to get into your classes. What's the best email? I told them they need to email you, and then you will send them the link. Is it $10 a month? Is that correct?
Yeah, creation.
$10 a month. And then it is, there you go, creationgospel@gmail.com. And then they'll set that all up for you, and they'll send you the private links. Please don't share those. Those are all just for those that are, and then you're teaching on Monday morning and Tuesday evenings, correct? Or did I get that opposite?
There's a 9 o'clock Eastern Monday class in the evening, and then there's a 12:30 p.m. Tuesday class, which helps people, Africa, Europe, and so forth, because it's their evening, and you don't have to pick a class. You can attend either class, or you can just use the recordings.
Right.
And then we also go ahead and back it up on YouTube, and they'll have access to the playlist. I think there's around 230 videos in the playlist right now that aren't available to the general public because they're a little deeper than normal. And I want people to know who Yeshua is. You know,
right.
If we can't get past Jesus and I have to explain who Jesus is, then probably it might be a little too advanced. So I keep the simpler stuff over on the public side.
There is a public one, and it's under Creation Gospel, correct? Your YouTube videos are on the public ones are Creation Gospel or Holisa Alwine?
I think it's Holisa Alwine.
Okay.
But if you put in the Creation Gospel, it'll probably pull me up anyway, because that's, I think, the programs that have been on there the longest are the Creation Gospel Workbook 1 videos.
Okay. So all the things. So if you jump in on Mondays or Tuesdays, I encourage you to, no matter what level you're at, you will feel like you're in a fire hose being blown on you. Sit there, because you will earn you. It's an immersion technique. It's like if you're trying to learn a language sometimes, and they'll pop you in a country with a family and you have no idea what anyone's talking about. So I will tell you, I remember my first two classes. I thought, I have no business telling one person anything about Torah. I know nothing. I don't even understand what she's saying right now. And Brenda and I both said that, and I called Brenda and I said, okay, I have to admit something to you. I have no idea what she's talking about. I'm the dumbest person on this planet. She goes, okay, I thought I was the only person, and we've been doing this for years. But it's like, then I would listen to it again. And then now no one else has to do this, but I would be driving to different patients' homes, and I would listen like 2 or 3 times. And then now I listen, I'm like, oh, I can follow along, instead of feeling like I'm the preschooler trying to go to a 12th grade government class or physics class. Yeah, because I too should never have the launch codes. So takeaways. So you can get that. We also in the rooted-cafe.com/store, we try to make it easy for you with Holisa's like workbooks. So you could click them and it'll take you over to her Amazon, because sometimes it's hard looking for all the things. We tried to put a bunch of them, some of the Becky books that from the teachers that have been on here. So it's easy to find, but otherwise, even on Amazon, all of the workbook 5 has multiple volumes. Each volume is for each book of Torah. So there's multiple ones of those. And knowing that Holisa, everything is she's supporting orphanages in Africa, in schools. And so that's what you'll know that's you when you're giving. You're not like, oh my goodness. I mean, they look like this, like college books, and they're actually, these are easy. They're not, and I will say easy. They're simple. They're funny. I love that some of the, I don't know, some of the titles make me laugh. I giggles because we get a little like Prison Break, Tattoos and Tattletales, dry sticks and lunatics, Sit Down and Shut Up, Buckle Up and Hang On. So some of you can get a little bit of peek into Halisa's personality. So it's fun. Go grab those if you're wanting to start somewhere. That might be the good place for you. Is in the workbooks, workbook 5. Go grab the next 2. Know that you're supporting a really good cause. Gosh, there's so many things. You can get into a creation gospel class. I don't think any new ones are starting right now. Just finishing out one. I know. Start with creation gospel 1, because if you don't understand the premise of the creation, it's all the things through to Revelations, right, Halisa? I mean, that's kind of your genius, is in not one of your geniuses, but
Well, it just, if you know those layers, those fundamentals, if you know the 7 days of creation, you can preach the gospel to anyone. But you do have to study the 7 days. You have to study the specific words in the specific order. Once you get that, you really can. If you knew the words for trees and birds and fish and sun and moon and stars in any language on earth, you could take those 7 days of creation and teach the gospel. And so, that's great even for kids. If you learn that with your kids, awesome, because they'll learn it faster than you, by the way. I found that out. And then we overlay the 7 spirits of God in the book of Isaiah and explain how those really do slide into the same slots. We study the 7 feasts, they'll slide into the very same slots. And then, just for kicks and giggles, we'll go to the book of Revelation and study the 7 assemblies of Revelation, and they will slide into exactly the same slots. And then you can say, oh my goodness, our Creator is magnificent, because he doesn't change the patterns on us. If he teaches us a pattern, he's very consistent with it.
so good. It's so good. I super encourage you to jump in and do that. I know there's just so much life, and I mean, that is the good news. It's the good news is showing someone there is no conflict. I don't know about you, but for me, when I came into Torah, all of a sudden, all the scriptures I'd memorized and all the Bible quiz teams and memorizing the books, they all just came together where they seemed all separate. And then they just all of a sudden fit together. And now there's hyperlinks that'll pop up here and there. A hyperlink will come, oh, that connects to here. Oh, oh, that's what that really meant. And it connects to here. So thank you for being such an amazing teacher. Thank you for walking in your gift and sitting in your place in the camp and not trying to go to another place so that we missed out. Thank you for
Well,
being.
I think we all feel overwhelmed if we get into an area where we haven't immersed ourselves before. And that's just an opportunity I've had in my life, is I have been able to study Hebrew. I have been able to study from the Jewish sources. And so, just like knowing about King Messiah, being able to control the winds, I wouldn't know that if I hadn't studied the Jewish sources about that. Now, that doesn't mean I swallow everything I read, but where I
Spit the
can
bones
see
out.
where it matches with the scriptures we have, I'm like, yes, then we can understand it better. And so that's what I try very hard to do. Is it might feel like a water hose at first, but that's the way I like to learn. I want to learn from somebody who knows more about that topic
Yes.
than I do, because if I already know it, I don't.
Card with you.
So I still like to learn from people who know way more than me.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
that's the roller coaster ride. There's ups and downs, but it'll keep you humble. And that's what we need. If we stay humble, we can always learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about that too the other night, talking about Moses saying he was the most humble man. Like saying I'm the most humble man is not a very humble thing. So, but there is method to this math. So your takeaways today, let's wrap this up. Your takeaways today, this is a great book again about him restoring identity, taking you. This is not just speaking, this is speaking to you. He wants to take you where you're fragmented, where you've been scattered. Maybe your family is scattered. It is his will that you pray that you can align with him in the redemption of your family. If you've been scattered, if it's broken, there is redemption. You can thank him for the restoration of your family and expect it to be gathered back to the camp and things to be healed, fractures to be mended. The other thing is you can expect that you can receive that this is your identity. What's your identity in him? Where am I supposed to stand in the camp, Father? Where's my spot? Where do you want me? You can proclaim your name. Who are you? Whose are you? This is another, they're again realizing who they are and whose they are. We say this almost every single week. This is knowing your identity, knowing who you are in Messiah, knowing that. And this is an opportunity for you to spend that time, especially before we start Shavuot. This is a time when you tarry, when you wait, when you kavah. Father, who am I? I know whose I am. Who do you want me to be? I'm fragmented. And then, of course, the last two things, our takeaways today are get authority over the dirty dishes in your laundry, and you can't minister without clean underwear. So, mic drop. Thanks everyone for taking out with us. Thank you, Elisa. I love you. We're going to stop recording now and stop our live feed, and we're going to just go into our after party. I don't think Elisa can stay very long, but we can hang out with you guys for a couple minutes and chat, and then Elisa can hop off whenever she needs to leave. But love you all. Elisa, any final parting words?
I just ask everybody this week to be really conscious of Israel and how much they need our prayers right now. This is a little worse than when we were down there for the archaeological dig in February before last. And I don't know. I know that Israel needs to turn loose of the United States and every other support they lean on so that they can lean only on the Father. But it's still a painful transition, I'm sure, just like it is for us. How many times have we leaned on our own economics, our own contacts, and if we let go of that, it means like jumping off a cliff of faith to just turn it over to the Father. And, for a whole nation to do that, I can only imagine, because I know how hard it is for me to let go of, what I think are my securities in order to trust.
Oh, that is actually the word this week that he's giving me. I wrote it, is to not lean on my own understandings. I have so many understandings, and whatever that looks like, politically, or my family, things I've inherited, or religion I've attached myself to, is that last week it was about looking back and languishing on things, and now this week was about my own my releasing my understanding. So thank you for that, because I think our understanding is, it's like, oh, we have to fight with Israel, we can't let go of them or we won't be blessed. We have to understand that that's part of the process, and we have to release that understanding as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the
Blessings, blessings. Right.
I am going to have to jump off because I've got an appointment. I only got 2 hours to get ready for Shabbat.
Oh,
So
go.
I
Love
better
you. Bless you.
and get something in the oven, or it'll be a cold Shabbat.
Blessings, friend. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.